Greetings, this is Ty Brown with AthleticDirectorU. I'm here at the 2022 NACDA convention here in Las Vegas. Happy to be back on ground. I'm joined by Scott Leykam. Scott is the Vice President of Athletics at University of Portland. Greetings, Scott. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here. Nice to have everybody on the West Coast.
Right, exactly, out here. I want to talk to you about a couple things. Maybe not the normal conversation we have with athletic directors, but I think along those lines, right? The first thing is, I asked you offline what were some of your most significant accomplishments, and you've been there. This is your 11th year in the industry for 27 years. Spent time at Stanford at the WCC. The first answer you said was we put in a kind of an apparatus for mental health for the student athletes and gathering community resources to be able to do that. Tell me a little bit about that. Obviously, we know the need why it needed to happen, but essentially how the thought process and how you can make it happen with whatever you had to have within the department.
We have a really good health center on campus,
Okay.
but the reality is they're trying to serve 4,000 students every day, and their bandwidth is limited.
Right.
And we knew that coming out of COVID and just the challenges every day in Division I athletics, we had to have something more. So myself and Karen Peters, who's our number 2 in the department, brainstormed on, can we go outside and what that looks like? And literally, you've seen the whiteboard conversation about how are we going to fund this and how are we going to do it? And thankfully, we had some benefactors that are in the health profession that have given significant money to say, why don't you build a network? We know you're still trying to fly the plane here, but we believe in what you're trying to do. And Karen did an outstanding job. We found 4 providers, one of whom is a former student athlete for us. All 4 are former student athletes at one institution or another, and they come to our campus. So 4 days a week, we have a licensed provider from the city, many of them with other college or pro sports experience that are in our Rec and Wellness Center meeting with our student athletes. And it's one of those things with our Student Athlete Advisory Committee for them to say at the end of this year, that's one of the best things we've ever done.
Really?
And it's what we needed. That's a win. Now the challenge is, how do we retain those 4 people? How do we fund at a higher level? Like where the benefactors have been great is health insurance is a tough piece. So what our benefactors have done is, anything that's not covered by insurance, the student athletes will never go out of pocket for this. And it's been a game changer for our student athletes.
Which is excellent. So the structure of that, is it like they're on a retainer to come once a week, or tell me about how that's...
So we have a calendar through TeamWorks, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they come from 8 to 5 or noon to 6 or noon to 8. There was a little bit of leap of faith on both parties that we'd be able to fill all those slots, right? The last thing you want is somebody to come to your campus and not visit with anybody.
Right.
But we've been able to fill those slots very quickly. I think what we've all found in this industry is once student athletes find that mental health professional they're comfortable with, they will tell their teammates and their friends, and there will be kind of a critical mass. But no, they're there. We built our Rec and Wellness Center, which is where our basketball practice facility is, with a couple of clinic rooms. So those are set up, and it's a private setting. Coaches don't see it. I was worried about doing it in our main building where it was a little more
visible,
public per se, but in a very private location, and something we're dialed in for year 2.
Did you see initially any hesitation from student athletes, or were they just right in as soon as you started off?
I think you see a little bit. There's not as many crises in week 1 or week 2 of the semester, right?
Exactly.
It's when you have the first big test or the first big game or the first tough coach decision or something happens at home.
Right.
It took a couple of weeks to fill those slots, but once they were filled, we never looked back.
Yeah, which is excellent. And then they look forward to it each week.
They do.
I wonder if the practitioners that you brought in, I imagine sometimes you do a job and it can just be trading time for a paycheck. But I imagine them being former student athletes look forward to coming each week too.
They have, and they've invested, I give them so much credit, they've invested much more than the student athletes. They've met with our coaches, they've met with our administration on, here are the signs to look for. Because I think the biggest challenge for myself as an athletic director, or our senior associate athletic directors, our sports administrators, our coaches, they're not necessarily always trained to know when something's not right, or when a student athlete is struggling. But being able to talk to those folks to see those signs and understand how we can help has been one of the most valuable things for us.
Which is excellent. I wonder about that aspect of staff and admin mental health, right? Which obviously the student athletes are a top priority because this is why we're all here on campus. You know, staff and admin go through a lot too. The work is, you know, doesn't stop at the end of the day, and you're sometimes working weekends and throughout the year. And I imagine they probably have health benefits where they can go out and find it. But you being the leader, how do you make sure they are taking care of themselves and taking that time to self-reflect?
We have a really good staff assistance program that is available. And whenever we have a trigger moment, or through COVID or otherwise, it's something we've made sure to share with staff. And I think COVID changed, and you and I talked about this offline a little bit. It changed how we look at that and how we take care of our people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess you probably have to be, like you mentioned, those practitioners are helping the coaches and staff identify amongst the student athletes when they see things. In the leadership role, there's a certain awareness you have to have amongst your staff and admin when you see something that may not be something major, but you may see something growing in someone. I mean, I guess as a leader, have you throughout years pulled somebody to the side and say, hey, I don't know if there's something going on, but let's talk about it, or can you tell me about that aspect, being in a leadership role?
You want to be careful of the privacy piece,
right, exactly.
Right? No, but it's a fantastic question. And yes, I mean, I've had that conversation. I've heard you're struggling with something. I've seen some things. How are you? Is there something we can do? Can we go to lunch? Do you need a day? Do you need 2 days? And what we've started to do, I think we all see this, right? April, May, June, at the end of the school year, when people start to hit the wall before summer, that vacation is not an option. Vacation is a requirement. And some of it is you want to be careful of the whole mandatory fun thing. But is department happy hours and department golf outings at the Muni down the street. It's just stuff where people can relax and disarm and not feel like they're on the clock, but you're supporting them. And again, I think COVID caused us to see that in ways that we had never dreamed of.
Yeah, speaking of COVID, it seems like, you know, when you're in a leadership role, or just any role, period, but specifically leadership, you go through life and you have your philosophies and you lead the way you lead and develop people the way you develop, especially when you've been in chair for going on 11 years. Sometimes there's a significant emotional event that may be an inflection point in terms of evolution of leadership, whether it be having a kid, whether it be some outside force doing something on campus where you realize, you know what, maybe I need to change up some things. I imagine the pandemic did that for all of us.
It did. I think for me, it was kind of a double whammy. My stepfather, who raised me, passed away a couple of years before, and we cared for him till the end. And then COVID. But you talk about being in the business 27 years. I mean, my first job was $12,000, no benefits, 75 hours a week, right?
Make it happen. Right?
Making it figured out, right? But it was head down for 27 years from mid-August to Memorial Day, you're on the train and you're going to go hard, and you want to win and you want to take care of your student athletes. Sure. I think COVID caused us all to step back and say, is the 80 hours necessary for some of our people, right? And I think division is a strong word, but we had people where it was easy for them to work from home, right? And then we had people, your athletic trainers, your coaches, your weight room folks. It's hard to tape an ankle from your living room on Zoom, right?
Exactly, right.
So kind of balancing those two pieces, but with some of our staff learning that, hey, if our ops guys had 3 baseball games and 2 spring soccer games and 2 tennis matches, do we need to see them on Monday?
Right.
Do we need to see them on Tuesday? Because there's a lot of that prep stuff they could do from home, and they can do planning calls from home. Is how do we allow people to have that day or two at home? Because now you can't, I think it may become semi-permanent. May become semi-permanent, may become permanent, right? But how do you maximize the life of that staff, or not only for the employee, but for the organization as well.
And then in terms of for you, right, being the AD, going 1,000 miles per hour, right, and expecting everybody else to go 1,000 miles per hour every day, the impact on your family, the impact of being home for those however long we were all at home, and realizing, I really probably haven't spent enough time doing this with my family.
Until you're sitting in a living room, and I know a lot of people can sympathize with this, until you're sitting in a living room with your 3 kids and they're all on their Zoom classes and I'm doing a conference Zoom meeting on how we're going to get back, I learned a lot about our kids. We had lunch together. I haven't had lunch with my kids in the spring ever, right? I mean, we got to sit outside in the backyard or the front yard and just walk as a family and hang out. And I think I learned more about my kids. Still have a long ways to go as a parent, like all of us. But being there and being present, I think as a family was eye-opening for me on on how we get better. And I know a lot of our staff is going through the same piece.
Tell me, I want to dive into that with family and with the staff. We're moving past the pandemic, hopefully, right? Tell me about, and it's crazy to ask kind of a business type question about family, but the outcomes, right, of how you will activate now with your family and kids you talked about as we move forward. Like, have you made executive decisions like, I'm going to make sure I do this each, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, I've gone to more games in the last year or two. I've even tried to activate. Last year, we made a point of activating the family. Because as my kids got older, when they were 8 or 9, they'd come to all the Pilots games. Now that our 2 older ones are 18 and 14, they don't want to come to work with Dad, right? But we picked some nights where it was easier night to bring them. I know we wouldn't have as much work stuff, and we'd have dinner and we'd hang out and we'd be a family. Like being more intentional. We're not going to be able to be together every hour. Right. It's 5 people with 5 different schedules. Right. But being more intentional about, hey, here's a time we can do this. My wife made a good point the other day. Kind of a hidden challenge has been, much like with COVID, we just stopped. Like, we're back full go now, right? It wasn't really a transition. I mean, we're hitting the ground running, and I've noticed that with this year and being here and looking at the travel schedule the next 6 months, we're back. Right? We're fully back. But how do we create some intentional time to do it,
right?
That?
I imagine that's what opened your eyes up, and it may be an aspect that we actually probably need to plan this in, right? Instead of letting it come natural, which you hope to do with the family, but you may need to schedule this in. So these days, and hope that the teenagers are willing to allow that to fit into their schedule. So.
And that's where, as a leader, right? Yeah. I'm thinking, and there was some good comments on my 360 evaluation this year, is that model self-care, model taking vacations, and I have a really good senior staff that'll say, why are you here?
Oh, wow.
Take a day.
They kind of telling you.
I hope they mean it well, but it's, you got to take care of yourself too. But as I'm thinking about my family, a lot of our senior staff has kids.
That's the thing. So the family.
Other folks that they're balancing, and not just me, but how are we empowering this person to juggle those pieces?
Right. That's the follow-up question, really, is now with staff, it's easier to make it formal, right? So if you work these 3 days straight, something like that. Have you put anything in place, formalized, to make sure that the staff takes care of themselves, or to make sure they, you know what kind of work the load they had, and they take, like you mentioned, Monday and Tuesday off? So is there anything in place? Because if it's not in place, overachievers will keep working 1,000 miles per hour without stopping.
No, and it's been a challenge. I think we've pushed down our division leaders in some key areas, the training room and the weight room. That one thing that made me very happy walking by the training room about a month ago, there was a calendar with, here's the trainer that's in the office today, right? Okay. So it was excellent. It was very formal. Here's who's here and here's who's not. It's creating it with the staff that's a bit of a challenge, right? Coaches have those balanced in season, their head down, they have their recruiting periods, and then otherwise they're still going hard, but there's some times where they have balance. Yes, where with staff now, I feel like, I looked, our last event this year was June 11th, the last day NCAA track that we competed. And our first soccer game is August 14th.
Right.
what happened to being done on Memorial Day and starting on Labor Day?
Yeah.
Like it's condensed. And for our staff, how do we build in some of those periods that the coaches have?
And I guess that's the question, right? It's not necessarily.
There's not an easy answer.
Yeah, it's not a solved problem. It's the question that's probably going to be ongoing from this point forward. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of personal life in terms of family and also with staff, which shows that you care about what you do there at Portland, the University of Portland. Thanks for joining us here on Athletic Director U.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. That was Scott Leykam. He is the Vice President of Athletics at University of Portland. And of course, I am Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.